Hi, this is Steve Gillmor, and this is a abbreviated version of the Gillmor Gang. We're having some difficulties on the internet. I believe I'm just getting an email from Brett Slatkin, who we hope to have come on the show today, and I understand that he's not going to be able to make it because he says that the internet is fucked, which I certainly agree with. So,
he's at Google HQ. That's kind of worrying.
We'll just have to talk about PubSubHubbub or whatever it is now called without him. Today, our guests are several people. Well, one person who has been on the show recently, Jyri Engestrom. Jyri, welcome.
Thanks, Steve. It's great to be back.
And another one who you are very familiar with, Kevin Marks, who has not been on the show recently, but is now.
Hi there. Good to see you again. Yeah, I missed you when I was in England.
Yes, and we missed you. And joining us from his world headquarters of Superfeeder is...
Hey, Julien Genestoux is the pronunciation.
Julien Genestoux.
Perfect.
Well, welcome, Julien.
Thanks.
We're going to sort of talk about track today, but I want to take that off the table a little bit by saying that track that doesn't support the main Twitter fire hose is not track. It's something else, and I know that you have no way of controlling what Twitter allows us all to receive back from our contributions to their business model. But you want to tell us a little bit about what you mean by track?
Sure. So basically, just to start from the beginning, Superfeeder is, I would say, today the biggest independent hub provider for PubSubHubbub. So PubSubHubbub is a way to make feeds real time. So it means basically that we get a lot of data in real time from a lot of different sources, whether they are blogs, obviously like short messages from competing networks from Twitter, check-ins on location websites, but also like job offers and several other types of data. And so all this data goes through Superfeeder, and we decided to build something pretty similar to what Twitter built in the very early days, which was called Track, and it's kind of deprecated now. And the way it works is basically instead of subscribing to a given feed, to an identified source, you can subscribe to a keyword. And then anytime we find something in this massive flow of information that flows through Superfeeder, we're going to ping you with this data.
Jyri, you have known Julien for some time now, correct?
Yeah, that's right. I was at Google when I first met Julien. He sort of showed up one day and had this crazy idea to build an independent PubSubHubbub hub. That was in the early days of PubSubHubbub. And I was sort of helping out Brett Slatkin and Brad Fitzpatrick over at Google at the time to build the protocol and just generally kind of help with product manage things. And I thought it was awesome that somebody was, creating an actual startup specifically based on the idea of providing an independent PubSubHubbub hub. So I was immediately excited. And then after I left Google, I actually became an advisor. Julien asked me to join his company Superfeeder as an advisor. So that's our relationship currently.
Well, why don't you give us, from your perspective, Jyri, a little bit of an overview of what you think is the value of what Superfeeder is providing in general, and then we'll talk more specifically about this new track offering.
Right. Well, the basic principle, I like to start from the perspective of publishers on the web, which is generally anybody who's posting any content online. And the main concern for any publisher should really be user engagement. That is their message, whatever it is that they're publishing, whether it be somebody like Huffington Post or whether it's just your personal Twitter feed, who's actually receiving that, and what are they doing? Are they finding it timely? Are they actually engaging with your content? And it turns out that timeliness is key in that, because if we post something that goes to people immediately, there's a much higher response rate, much higher rate of engagement. And Superfeeder is helping any publisher out there who's publishing feeds, typically Atom or RSS feeds that used to obviously be things that subscribers would have to poll to actually make those feeds real time, so that they can now be sent out using Superfeeder's push infrastructure over PubSubHubbub.
So why are you on helping him out as an advisor? What do you think? Why is he's standing right there, so we're talking right behind his back.
I'm here.
But at the same time, I think that if you were to answer this question, Julien, then it would be more self-serving than to have somebody else say it for you. Which is, what's so special about Superfeeder in the context of what appears to be, largely a Google product, namely PubSubHubbub.
So I wouldn't say it's actually a Google product.
No, I that's what I'm still trying to keep you quiet while I get Jyri to.
Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
So PubSubHubbub is not really a product; it's a protocol, and anybody can build infrastructure that uses that protocol, as many people indeed are building. And I think what makes Superfeeder interesting is that we need strong independent players who are out there and actually helping. This is about the distributed real-time web here. We need open protocols that that people actually use, and Superfeeder is one of the sort of core parts of that, because PubSubHubbub is built around this idea of hubs that actually publishers can delegate, to which the publishers can delegate this work of pushing content out, and PubSubHubbub is currently providing that in a kind of a turnkey fashion to just about any publisher out there.
And Julien, now's your chance. Why do you think that there's been so little support for PubSubHubbub outside of Google?
I wouldn't say there has been little support for PubSubHubbub outside of Google. Just to remind you, all the blogging platforms out there currently support PubSubHubbub, whether it's WordPress, Sixapart, Tumblr, Posters, and none of them are actually Google products. Obviously, Blogger has PubSubHubbub, but it's just one of the big blogging
But in
platforms.
terms of hubs, how many are there?
So it's always the question whether build or buy something, right? A lot of people don't think that it's something that they should build themselves, and they'd rather buy the services from another company, and this company in this case is Superfeeder. I'm pretty sure in the near future we're going to see more hub providers doing more stuff for other publishers.
Why are you so sure about that? They would be competitors of yours, in other words.
Yes, they would be competitors of us, but at the same time we're using the same protocol. We're trying to change the way basically web applications are built together. Right now, if you're building a web app that needs to grab content on other services, you have to pull them over and over again, which means that basically you won't do it at a big scale. FriendFit did that, and it was probably the best engineering team in the world who did it. And a lot of services are struggling to build similar things. So I really think there is a need for a way, there is a need for PubSubHubbub in a way. There is a need for a common protocol that will enable services to talk to each other in a much more efficient way.
And there are currently competing hubs. I mean, Superfeeder is not the only provider of hubs, right, Julien? I mean, there's like WordPress as a hub, for instance.
Yeah. So right now, there are other hubs that are mainly proprietary to the publisher. So the publisher built their own hub. So we're coming back to the build versus buy debate. Some people decided to build, some others decide to buy. It's really something that has to be decided by each and every publisher.
So how come this is only about blogs? I thought thought blogs were so 2000 and whatever.
I agree. I mean, I think it's not really blogs. It's more about social data. Because when you think about status.net, they're one of the biggest PubSubHubbub providers as well. GoWallet does it, and a few other social apps do it. So it's not really blogs. It's social apps in general, and not so much currently about other types of apps. I'm thinking about e-commerce websites, obviously, and a lot of other services. Even like media sites don't really support it widely at the moment. We're trying to work that out. But I'm really looking forward to the day where Amazon basically start pushing their own inventory via PubSubHubbub.
But again, you can't force Twitter to come in. So what have you got?
I've got everybody else. I mean,
Well, who is
it's
everybody else? I mean, FriendFeed's gone.
actually
Friendfeed is
FriendFeed is actually a big PubSubHubbub subscriber and provider. I mean, their feeds are real time, and you can and they subscribe to real time feeds.
Well, I
Can
understand.
you can you state some of like what are the biggest publishers right now using Superfeeder, for instance?
So Google is obviously the biggest one, I would say, because all their feeds are really part of PubSubHubbub. So whether it's FeedBurner, it's Google Reader, it's Blogger, sorry, and they've got like a ton of others. Then you have independent publishers like WordPress that we mentioned, is also a pretty big one. I would say Status.net, ClickSet is also a pretty big social app that has PubSubHubbub. FriendFeed is as well another one, and then you got.
But
all
how
the
can you
super-
say that FriendFeed is a big one? I mean, they may be supplying a lot of data, but as Robert Scoble constantly reminds me, nobody's there anymore.
But the FriendFeeds, I mean, there's other big publishers too, right? I mean, if you look at like the Superfeeder website, there's Tumblr, Gowalla, Posterous, the Huffington Post, Gawker.
Gawker Media. Yep.
So these are all using Superfeeder to real-time enable their feeds using over PubSubHubbub.
Right, but that's RSS that's being real-time enabled, basically.
Yeah.
Okay, so what about that is social? I mean, what about a blog RSS feed is a social feed? Not sure I get that.
Well, it's the activities from a given publisher, so we're switching to the activity streams topic, but basically posting to a blog is a social activity. It's I mean, it's part of what we call the social web, I would say.
All right, I think our real-time feed video feed just went down, so I don't know what's going on. I think that perhaps Steve Jobs is retaliating for having to provide free bumpers to everybody.
He's put us all in an anechoic chamber. Yeah.
All right, so we'll just. I'll attempt to restore this, but I also have to try and keep the conversation going. So, Kevin, why don't you just take over here for a second while I try and restore the feed?
Okay. So, I mean, the other part of this is there's a big conversation going on around the details of PubSubHubbub and taking it beyond just existing blog posts and feeds. For example, there's the stuff that Monica's been doing at Facebook, talking about using PubSubHubbub as a way to send updates when other information changes, and which basically means coming up with a way to encapsulate JSON inside PubSubHubbub rather than just atom structures, and then propagate that. And that discussion's been going on on the PubSubHubbub list in public, and with some examples going on. And that's something that I'd love to. We should get Brett to talk about sometime soon. But extend the debate. This is something that's been implicit in the PubSubHubbub idea from the beginning, which is it's not just for atom updates. It should be let you move arbitrary chunks of data about. But so far, the atom feeds were the easiest place to start because people were already generating those.
Even more than actually atom updates, I think right now too many people consider feed as an aggregate of the same type of information, so blog posts basically. And I think a feed is actually much more of a log than an aggregate. It means that we have entries in the feed that might not relate together. So the profile update that you mentioned on Facebook, I think this would be very interesting to actually have a feed that has entries, atom entries, but all the atom entries are different, how can I say, activities, coming back to the activity stream pattern. But basically, hey, Julien updated his profile picture. Somebody commented on Julien's last status. Somebody tagged Julien in a picture. So this is still a feed. This is still entries. Yes. But all these entries are actually very different things. And I think this is what's very interesting about combining, on one hand, PubSubHubbub and activity streams, which are more of a log, I would say, than a set of identical data.
Yes, no, I think that's right. And that the point of activity streams is to just encode different things in there. But part of it's the same debate. I mean, so in each of these we've got a atom representation so that it can go through the existing feed infrastructure, but we're also building JSON representations that are easier for programmers to use from JavaScript and to fit in with existing data models. And that it comes down to agreeing representations of things, which is what activity streams has been about, and we're starting to see that show up quite fruitfully. The Microsoft Live's adoption of it has been something that's been going on for a while, but their latest release is quite thorough, and I suspect they're going to be one of the largest publishers soon.
Yes, we can hope this.
Yes, I'm not sure they've actually got a PubSubHubbub hookup yet, but they have got the activity
No, they
stream
don't.
stuff.
Yeah, they do have the activity stream stuff. They
Yeah.
do not push the content already outside. And we're coming back to the Twitter issue, actually. They have a pretty big issue with distributing content that is not originally from live. So say I plug my Twitter account on live and my Facebook and my Flickr and blah, blah, blah. The issue that they have is like they have to have an agreement with all these publishers to allow them to republish the user's data. So on my live feed, it's very hard to actually have my tweets because Microsoft might not have the right to redistribute my content.
So this is the problem we've got of Twitter putting business models in between rather than standards. Is
Yes,
that the same?
pretty much.
Yeah,
Pretty much. And I mean, and we're quoting Twitter, but Facebook pretty much has the same attitude at the moment.
They do?
Yes.
Why is that?
Because, for example, they don't allow us to pull the RSS feeds from Facebook. Facebook has RSS feeds for public data for the Facebook pages. We, Superfeeder, can't pull them without cheating by hiding ourselves. And we don't want to hide or cheat, so we can't pull them.
But
It's pretty much the same issue as Twitter.
But they own FriendFeed, and FriendFeed seems to operate in real time. So why
FriendFeed does, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so why don't you just use the FriendFeed version of Twitter in order to pull this data?
Because I think this would be hiding and cheating, and there is probably not all the data that we need on FriendFeed from Twitter.
But it would be a good subset of it. I mean,
It would be a good subset from geeks and people like us. I mean, but outside of this,
well, who do you think
might
is
not get-
paying attention to this other than people like us?
Oh, we actually have a lot of subscribers from random Twitter little feeds.
Look, I understand that. I'm just saying that the way that you spread technology is by getting early adopters and people who are passionate about it to have some sort of a service that actually works. FriendFeed right now seems to be the only one that is both open and accessible via an API without rate limits, as far as I've been told.
No, I mean, StatusNet is doing a pretty good job at this.
But
actually.
StatusNet doesn't have doesn't resource Twitter.
Actually, they do. Yes,
Updates.
you can
Yeah.
see Twitter updates on the StatusNet network.
Okay, so are you taking those and pushing them back into your so-called track service?
We are pushing. We do have some of the of the StatusNet data, probably not all, and definitely not all the Twitter data there.
Okay, so
And we're working with other big, like I'm thinking about Buzz. Buzz is also one of the very big PubSubHubbub providers, both subscribers and publishers. And we're working with them to actually get this data into Superfeeder's track feature.
but Buzz doesn't even allow import or effective or speedy import of Twitter either. So I'm not sure.
No,
what
it's
that-
not. It's not Buzz who doesn't allow this. It's Twitter.
yeah.
Well, that's not clear. I mean, that wasn't
That's
never
fairly
stated
clear.
publicly. Well, I
Well,
think it's
there's
obvious.
absolutely no
but,
doubt about it.
but when's that been stated? By who?
By the fact that it's not there. and Buzz would
Well,
want it to
when Buzz shipped, we a number of us asked questions about what was going to happen with the import of Twitter and whether it was going to be sped up, and the answer was yes. Right now that's not going to be happening, but eventually that would happen. And there were several people who suggested at the time that this was as much a decision on Google's part about trying to advance Buzz as a platform rather than second sourcing Twitter.
I mean, you probably know these guys better than me, but I would say it would be blind to think that you can build something like this without Twitter, as you said from the beginning. I mean, real-time doesn't exist outside of Twitter. If you start building something like Buzz and say, hey, we don't want Twitter, there's little chance that you're going to succeed. At the moment, I think they're struggling to get Twitter, and they just don't have a way to get this Twitter data in real time, which means that they have to poll over and over again, which means that it's going to be slow and delayed all the time.
Jyri, you think that's accurate?
Oh yeah, I think there's no doubt about that. Google would love for Twitter updates to show up in real time in Buzz. It's clearly a deficiency that many people perceive to be a deficiency of Buzz. that Google would like to fix. I don't have any doubt about that. I think the issue is that Twitter has been sort of indicating at various times that they would like to open up the they'd like to open up the fire hose more and blah blah blah. There's been all this conversation going on about it, and frankly, we just haven't seen that much progress on that front. So I think it's natural for sort of the other guys out there to start looking for alternate solutions, and
But
I
they
think
don't
that's
seem
good.
to
We
be.
need to put more pressure on Twitter.
Yeah, but that's the sort of the argument around federation, which I think is I'll defer to Kevin in terms of his enthusiasm for these kinds of lack of market force strategies, but I don't think that it's it's like a snipe hunt basically. It ain't going to happen. I mean, why do you think? It seems to me that either there's going to be some sort of a genuine effort to provide an alternate high bandwidth, perhaps geeky, but whatever stream of data that's accessible, and forget about the 50 million or 100 million people that are posting tweets about Britney Spears. I mean, I'm not sure that that value proposition has ever been stated
The point is to build
way.
something that is actually federated and is interoperable and can be implemented by anyone.
But that's that's putting the
and that's what we've got here.
if we waited around for that, then
it's
Apple
not a question
wouldn't
of
be
waiting around, it's a
Apple.
question of building it, which has been done. These pieces are put together, and then it's like, are you going to plug into it or not? What I'm hearing from
The answer
Monica
from
and David
Twitter
at Facebook
is no.
yes, we want to plug into it. I'm not hearing that from Twitter. That's true. Twitter seems to be sitting in the corner saying, no, we want to keep doing our own thing, and we're all too busy trying to keep up with growth. Are the two things that we hear from them regularly. And it will be nice if they would spend more time with this, but that's they've got their own priorities.
So they're trying to keep up with growth of numbers of people that frankly don't add anything to the issue of why track is valuable.
At the same time, Steve, in last time I checked Twitter's number of tweets per day, I mean the number of data the amount of data that Superfeeder was pushing daily from different publishers was actually 40% of Twitter's size, and it was like 3 months ago. So I think we currently push more than 20 million atom entries per day, unique atom entries per day to different subscribers. So I really think that very fast, we're going to catch up. Not only Superfeeder, but all the federated world. Like if you add a Buzz, Superfeeder, ClickSet, StatusNet already, it's much bigger than Twitter already in number of data that is pushed daily. So having said this is like Twitter is yes the big one, but it's not gonna last forever. I'm pretty sure like in the coming weeks or month, we're gonna add up all the data that goes through Buzz, Superfeeder, StatusNet, ClickSet. All these independent providers, and we're gonna actually outgrow Twitter a lot.
Well, I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. If you're saying
that
the largest fire hose. Oh, Brett is trying to call. Brett, if you can hear me, try calling on Newsgang 3. You're calling on a channel which. There it is. Tina, can you grab that? We might be able to bring Brett in here since I've been trying to bait him with all this hostility about PubSubHubbub. Hey, Brett. Brett, can you hear me?
Yo.
Okay, let's get you full screen and then. No, I don't actually. Wonderful.
Do you see me okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to expand you full screen. For some reason, this appears to be up. There it is. Beautiful.
Okay, sorry for the interruption, guys.
Oh no, I'm glad you could make it. As I was saying, I've been trying to, be as hostile as I can be about PubSubHubbub in order to get you on. Maybe
I had to go
harness a little
splice
bit
some
of
fiber down in the basement, so it took me a little bit of time.
Okay, well, we've got a dog barking in the background, so I think we're all here now. So Julien was just commenting on what he suggested was the volume of data that's flowing through Superfeeder is what you said 40% of the Twitter feed at this point.
Yes.
Not 40% of what's in the Twitter feed, but in terms of volume, that it's about 40% of what Twitter's volume is.
Yes, it's not the same data. There is little, very, very little shared data between the two services.
Right. So what I'm confused about is that if you're talking about, first of all, we talked about track being a function of coming off the main fire hose, which at the time and probably still today is, in fact, Twitter, because the conversations, for example, that you can't have a conversation particularly easily on on Facebook, for example, because the architecture is not really optimized for having a back and forth conversation. If you talk to somebody and make a comment, if you post something on Facebook and then somebody responds to it, that you get an email to that effect. According to you, you don't get a Superfeeder item because they won't allow you to pull it, correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so there's no real-time capability there, and
well,
if you reply to somebody's comment, it doesn't generate an email or any other kind of a ping to any other location. So effectively, Facebook is not a conversational model, which is what I think part of the track implications is the ability to be able to nail up a real-time conversation between two nodes that weren't necessarily intending or aware of each other to begin with. That's what happened with track originally, and that doesn't happen now. So my question, I guess, to Brett is, how do we, when you compare this 40% of data that's going to soon surpass, according to Julien, the amount of data that's on Twitter, what percentage of that data is blog posts and other kinds of things that aren't really real-time in nature?
So when you say real-time in nature, you're talking about the context of the conversation? Like you're wondering if they... You're saying connecting the comments together to the original post or some kind of actual conversation that's going on? I mean, that's the important part that you care about the most, or what is it exactly?
Well, I mean, it's one of the for me, originally track was most significant as a signaling mechanism, which allows you to be able to be identified by and approached by an unintended node on the network, thereby creating what was in effect a real-time communications network that didn't exist prior to that. And for a small period of time, that did exist, and then it was basically withdrawn by Twitter for various rationales, none of which were real, and all of which actually had to do with their business model or lack of it.
But your claim is that blogging doesn't have this real-time aspect to it? And
no, what I'm suggesting, yeah. I'm asking you, maybe you're answering me when you say that it does have this real-time capability. I've never seen a blog post which was then replied to in real time and the conversation continued.
Yeah, I think my favorite example of this is Tumblr. I think Tumblr does a great job of being real-time but also being kind of traditional blogging software. So, Tumblr, it famously doesn't have comments, and that's because their kind of ideology is, well, don't reply as a comment, post your own blog post as a reply, or, retumble a post as a way of giving feedback. And so you see conversations on Tumblr that actually have this kind of effect. They don't have track, but they do have kind of spontaneous connections that come up.
That's great, and so does FriendFeed does that. We're using it right now on this show on Building 43. You can see the the coincident messages, but the problem is that Tumblr is not exactly a large part of the market. So of the 40% that is currently, I'm using the 40% figure because Julien stated that, let's just say that 100% of that 40%, what percentage of that are actual real-time messages that are being used in that context the way that Twitter uses real-time?
I think actually a lot, because stuff like Hubbub and also the interfaces that FriendFeed and Buzz and other UIs have these days are so low latency. So, I mean, whenever you see people post to Google Buzz, for instance, you'll immediately start seeing comments show up, and you see a conversation occurring there. So I think that this does happen, and I subscribe to a bunch of people's Tumblr, and I see their posts kind of cascade as they retumble each other and so on. As a percentage, to answer the question, I don't know. That would be a really great stat for us to figure out. If you think that's more meaningful, and Julien does some really great statistics analysis, so maybe we could add that.
Well, I think it's extremely meaningful. I think that the loss of track damaged a number of opportunities in this area, and I would agree with you that Buzz has the infrastructure to support this, but to date it doesn't seem to have had the resonance outside of the initial target group of people. I mean, particularly it's a great resource in terms of listening to DeWitt Clinton and people inside Google who are talking about what's going on, primarily in terms of building out Buzz. Mm-hmm. And I think that you're right that this is starting to have some momentum.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I would add is, one of the things that we're working on a lot is getting this connection to the outside, so that there's, this is going back to the whole Salmon protocol and the federation protocols out there. So we're starting to work more with ClickSet and StatusNet to connect the actual federated islands and integrate them into Buzz. So I'm hoping that in the next few months going forward, we're going to start seeing a lot more crosstalk between these networks that have the quality that you're describing, but across providers. And maybe the Diaspora guys will get involved. I don't really know. We've got this summit this weekend, actually, on Sunday before OSCON. I don't know if anyone mentioned it, but we have a summit to really discuss and iron out some of the remaining issues in this OStatus stack, as they're calling it. And the hope is that more and more of these connected contextual conversations are going to start popping up across network, and then features like track would come out of that, and also allow for cross-network scanning and cross-network communication. So if you did have track and you could, let's say just a vanity query and somebody mentions you on StatusNet, you'd be able to reply to them from Google Buzz. That's kind of the direction.
Right. Well, when you say a vanity query, as the famous example of Technorati was built by Dave Sifry as a way of finding out what people were saying about him on the network. The so-called vanity query is, I think, at the heart of
I'm not saying
of this real-time environment.
I'm just
saying.
Yeah. So I'm agreeing with you in a sort of an obnoxious way, but that's just because I feel like that today. The sense of I don't mean to belittle what Julien is doing with the idea of track. What I do suggest to you is that we have all of these pieces that are floating around, sort of not in synchronous. Nobody can use all of these tools. The idea of a meeting on Sunday, that sounds good. The idea of promoting this, but it's been 3 years now that we've been talking about this, and the
Probably
ball
longer,
doesn't
yeah.
seem to have moved forward dramatically quickly.
Well, we're starting to see it. I mean,
It's not even a year.
It's not,
Well,
it's not
go
even
ahead.
just-
Wait a second. I want to.
well, Steve and I have been talking about this stuff for 7 years.
No, Julien, you were arguing. You were shaking your head, Julien.
Sure. I mean, PubSubHubbub was announced last year in July, so I think it's like a year and a week that now PubSubHubbub is something public. So it's not yet 3 years. I mean, we're slowly moving there. Obviously, protocols is the first
you
step,
missed
the
my
first
point.
break.
You missed my point. I mean, when did I write the RSS is dead article? That was
No.
that was more than a year ago, and
I
PubSubHubbub was announced shortly thereafter. As a matter of fact, it was announced at the Real-Time Crunch Up that we put on
Yep.
at the
Yeah,
time.
in July last year.
Okay,
Yep.
so
No, I agree with the point. I'm just saying, like,
but
protocol
wait,
is the
hang on a
first.
second,
Right.
Julien. Let me just get to the point, which is that from a political perspective, this is not going well.
I don't know. It depends. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I think the fact that we've got this many companies agreeing to interoperate with this stuff is actually going very well from a political perspective.
But we talk about that. How many companies are supporting open social right now?
We have more than 800
hundreds.
hubs.
Okay, and let's talk about Facebook. Are they doing it? No.
No, but they're not supporting open social, but they're supporting a
Right.
lot of these pieces that plug into it.
So
the-
the
so
question
the-
is always whether or not a whole bunch of smaller entities add up to a credible alternative or a wedge that will encourage those other vendors to get in, or do we just bypass them, as you're possibly suggesting? I think that's what Julien is suggesting.
Well, I mean, what we found with Open Social was that there was an initial stack of stuff that fitted together that solved a particular problem, and then we factored those into separate pieces and protocols that solved a piece of the problem, because not everybody had the exact same problem set. And so we've got OAuth and portable context and activity streams as the building blocks that have sort of spawned out of that. And what we're seeing is different companies adopting different pieces of that. And then PubSubHubbub is the flow system that plugs those together and lets them move between the sites. And the Microsoft stuff that they've been doing with Windows Live with activity streams and portable contacts and integrating multiple sites is a great example of this. They haven't picked up on PubSubHubbub yet. It would be great if they did that too. But all these pieces work one at a time. Facebook has adopted OAuth, portable contacts for importing, huge support of activity streams. They've got PubSubHubbub stuff working in the friend feeder piece, but not in the Facebook piece. But they're very engaged with doing that more. A lot of this is so. In my take is politically this stuff's going very well, which because the politics part is getting people to agree on stuff that interoperates and then actually implementing it, and we're seeing more and more of that.
Well, I would disagree with you about that. That it's going well. I would agree with you. I would agree with you. What you suggest. Here we're going to have the exhibit again. What does this mean?
This is Seismic, which now incorporates Buzz as well as Twitter, which means it's supporting this protocol stack in its Android client, which means I can mix the two in there.
So you're hanging Buzz's success as a political vector, and I.
I'm saying Buzz is the sort of
I already
standard
stated that
implementation
I
of
think
what you do first. But once you
Buzz is certainly getting some more momentum.
adding those status is then trivial. It just means changing the origin of it.
Say that again.
Once you've implemented Buzz in this, adding Superfeeder, ClickSet, any of the OSATA stuff becomes just a matter of adding another endpoint that you can add to this.
Okay, so
it's running the same protocol.
adding Superfeeder, what does that mean? Julien, what does he mean by adding Superfeeder to what?
To Seismic.
Well, not directly Superfeeder. All the publishers. Superfeeder is just the pipes. I mean, it's adding Tumblr, it's adding Posters, it's adding GoWalla. That makes sense. Superfeeder is just the pipes here. I mean, I'm happy as a user when I can Tumblr blog, tweet, and Buzz from the same interface, and I'm happy when I can consume all my friends' data on the same interface without even knowing where they posted initially. And that's actually what we're trying to build, like trying to build this infrastructure that nobody knows about, but that everybody uses.
All right, Jyri, I'm going to throw this at you. Some people have said, and I think it's a fair comment, that part of the reason for Jyri not gaining tremendous traction was because it attempted to do too much of a superset of what Twitter did originally. Unlike StatusNet, for example, when as it started as Identica, it basically, in no small part to a number of us who tried to make sure that it stayed compatible with the API from Twitter. There was a certain amount of overlap, but the product didn't have it didn't take advantage of the sort of bear hug nature of some of these other technologies, right? Is that a fair statement for you?
Not entirely. I think that it's a little bit too early to say whether how Jaiku may have fared in the end. It was early. For us, we were just about a year old when we were acquired by Google, and registrations were shut down. So that said, Jaiku was definitely more feature-rich than Twitter, and continues to be that. So in that sense, I think like the lesson that I think you're proposing here is really it's about social status updates. Twitter does that the best out of any service out there currently. It has the largest user base. If we are to hope for any kind of massive user uptake of any kind of federated protocol, it would have to be uptake specific to these status updates. And that's what you're not seeing happening. So what you're seeing happening is all kinds of other forms of content, long form blog post content, etc., starting to be pushed through these pipes. What we're not seeing is the kind of holy grail of interoperable status update services that enable people to communicate the same way that they can communicate over email without having to actually know even what the recipient's email provider is. And we're definitely not there yet. What I'm interested in is actually more interested in is what's Facebook going to do next. They've, like Kevin mentioned, there's a whole bunch of fairly recent recruits at Facebook, people who are very well versed with the philosophy and the actual implementation of things like PubSubHubbub and the other distribution protocols that are being worked on, and standards such as activity streams. So my hope is that we're going to see Facebook start to compete aggressively on that front by just keeping on adding more and more of those distributed features to Facebook, because their strategy right now is Facebook everywhere, and we're only seeing the beginning of that with the Facebook like button. And in my angle, the way I see it, these distributed protocols play exactly into that game, and Facebook's going to need them if it wants to execute on its strategy.
Julien, you're nodding. Do you agree with that?
Agree completely with Jyri. I think like if you have an approach where you want to put your content everywhere and you want all the content to go in your system, you need services like, you need protocol like PubSubHubbub. Definitely. It's something that is basically the pipes of the web eventually.
I don't know, what do you think, Kevin? Like, do you disagree with me?
No, I agree with you. I think, Monica Keller being at Facebook and working on this is hugely encouraging, but also that the friend feed guys are there, and now CTO and deep into the engineering structure is also an encouraging sign there, because they've been part of this, and they understand the power of distributed APIs. And if you look at what they've done with their APIs since then, it's definitely been a strong move in this direction. And all the indications we've had with conversation with them in public at GlueCon and in ongoing on the mailing list has been that they're still very keen to work on this stuff and to keep interoperating.
Right. That was also the message. I was just recently at a Facebook event in London where Mark Zuckerberg was there. He took probably about an hour of questions from the developer audience, and many of them dealt with just related questions to this, and it was very much the signal that they're on board. This is now their strategy. It's like put Facebook everywhere, put the content everywhere, and enable people to obviously it's great for them because it's their social graph that's just expanding to reach across the entire social web. We can have another discussion about whether that's a good or bad thing, but from a Facebook perspective, it's clearly strategic to them.
Yeah.
If I can step in real quick.
Please.
I think, I agree also, I guess we're all agreeing here, but I think I've been really happy to see the kind of change in the attitude that Facebook has. It's very subtle. I don't quite understand what it is yet. The biggest piece of news was the fact that they finally linked into the social graph using standard microformats last week.
That was great. I'm really glad they got rid of the roll me on the
It's
pages.
unbelievable. So basically what that means is that they have become a node in the federated identity system that's on the web using microformats REL-ME and FOAF, which is kind of part of Brad Fitzpatrick's social graph API efforts. And that's really huge because that actually federates their identity system with the rest of the web. So they're kind of putting their toe in the water, which is great. The other thing they're doing is their new search API implements about half of PubSubHubbub. It implements the most important parts, I would say. What it doesn't implement, we're going to resolve. I've had a bunch of meetings with Monica. She's written some great proposals. We're starting to get through the peer review phase of it now. And I think that maybe your frustration, Steve, with the speed that things are going is good. That means we're moving really slow, which is exactly what we should do. Because people, if we adopt things too quickly...
Yeah, that's it. That's exactly why I'm frustrated, is because it's going so slowly.
But it's actually purposeful. If you change the spec every week, people get really mad. And so half of the difficulty here is, we could just be writing code all the time and, hey, it works for these two nodes, and that's awesome. But then a third node comes along and they're like, hey, this sucks for these reasons. So,
well, look, I just want to make it very clear. I think what you guys are doing, all of you, and what Kevin's been working on for years, and is obviously having a great effect in the cumulative nature. But when somebody comes along and says that track is going to be coming back, and it's not really what track is, then I feel that it's important to say why not. And so my comments about the slowness are related to track. They're not related to the speed with which all of these different entities
okay. I think either way, I think that we are going slow, though. And I think that, we kind of, to hit the target of track that you need, or that you want, I guess it's not a totally...
Well, it's not so much what I need or want. It's what there were some characteristics around FriendFeed when it first appeared, which were virtually, taking what track had provided on Twitter initially and putting it into a real-time format and an interface that people began to swarm around, and there was a tremendous uptake of activity around that site. And then, of course, it got to a certain point where Twitter did its best to slow down the feed and constrain the ability for users to be able to do that capability, which I will remind you, as we get into a more strategic era around enterprise versions of this technology, such as the one that I'm working on at my new job at Salesforce with Chatter, that this is an enormously powerful wave of opportunity for in the enterprise, which means that this is going to move not just from this kind of theoretical open standards debate, but it's actually going to be used in business in a big way very quickly. And Google's got plans as well in that area, as do some other people. So what may have appeared to have been a philosophical or just a plain mania on my part 2 or 3 years ago is now big business, and it's going to get even bigger in a very short.
I think that's very true. I mean, talking back to the open social conversation, that's what we're seeing there as well. There's a lot of the action that's going on in open social now is through IBM and others who are building it up as a way to build gadgets within the firewall, which means that it's much less visible, but it is getting quite a lot of traction.
Okay, we're having continued problems with the stream. I'm not sure whether this is as a result of this global internet malaise, or whether Ustream is doing something weird, or maybe even the TriCaster is not supplying the correct feed. But I've been up and down with it. But those of you who are on Twitter or wherever else can just point out that we'll have the YouTube version of this will be up as soon as possible. All right, so let me just quickly sort of summarize where we are on this. I apologize for all the technical problems. We haven't really been able to get this conversation untracked, but I think that in the last 10 minutes or so, we actually got a pretty good snapshot of what's going on here. So starting with Jyri, can you tell me just your summary of what you think the import is of what Superfeeder's doing, whether or not Superfeeder is going to be become more visible and less plumbing in terms of a rallying point for interoperability that could lead to the resumption of track, and then just take that answer and follow around the roundtable really quickly.
Okay, why don't I kick off then? So I think the objective, just to kind of reiterate once more, is for us to have all of the content, the social content, status updates and such, activity streams formatted and available for anyone to follow using any client basically out there, whether it's a web client or some other client, regardless of what service they're using as their subscriber or publisher. So for this to flow. And then when we have this, the promise of track, because that track really is just a keyword filter on the entire fire hose of the entire social web, is that it becomes extremely powerful as a way to discover new content basically, because you're doing a search, a real-time search on all that data.
But it's not a search, it's a real-time alert.
That's
It's
exactly
a search in
the
the
point.
future.
Yeah.
It's a search in the future. You're
That's
searching
correct.
what's coming on.
It's perspective, yeah.
And so as a result of that capability, unintended conversations begin to take place. It's not just about finding information and discovering it. It's about people connecting with each other, much the way that FaceTime works with on the iPhone 4, where you can connect through a regular voice conversation and then flip over to the video channel and not be spending any minutes or any of that other thing. That's the capability that's at the core of why track was significant, in my opinion, and it's how we get there is what I'm asking the question. So can you tell me how we're going to get there or not?
You guys want to pick up on that?
Well, I interrupted you, Jyri, so you want to just finish your
I can
thought?
take a crack at it. So here's I think how it's going to go. First of all, the plumbing needs to be in place in terms of protocol level agreed upon standards. And typically, the way that anybody who's had any dealings with standards knows that it's exactly as Brett said. Standards by nature tend to move fairly slowly. We see this over and over again, regardless of what the industry is. And that there's a good reason for that. The interesting part is, however, that once we are at a sufficient level, we're going to start seeing first the sort of small disruptive players just using the standards to link to each other. And this is, I think, the stage where we are now. And we're going to see players that nobody really even understood were a part of the playing field start using it, as we're seeing with these sort of publishers who nobody really considered a part of the social web. And once that volume grows to a significant level, then the sort of leading players are usually the last ones. The biggest, sort of most established players are most often the last ones to actually adopt at full scale because they have the most to lose. So ideally, I think what's going to happen is not only are we going to see Facebook take the lead, hopefully, together with Google, in supporting these, but also, we have things like Diaspora. There's disruptive players that are growing really fast. Like, for instance, there's Foursquare, who are very, very open and interested in this space. They're looking at ways to, grow even faster. So ideally, I think we will find new disruptive players entering the market who can then leverage these standards to actually accelerate their growth and challenge the incumbents. And that's something that I'm interested in just purely as an angel investor.
All right, I think that's a good summary. Brett, last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my last thoughts are just that I think that once kind of goes the way that Jyri explained, which I agree with generally, I think that what what we should also be aware of is that Track is not going to be a single product, and it's not going to have a single provider. I think that what's going to be really cool is how many different companies come out with the Track feature. I think the differentiation, Superfeeder's here and they've got it and it's great, and it has a larger kind of set of data to track over than anything else you can really find out there. But what it's going to come down to is the value add on top of Track. So the kind of bare bones feature that you've talked about, Steve, is just the beginning, and I'm really looking forward to a time when we actually differentiate between Track as an infrastructure capability and Track as an actual product.
Yeah, I disagree with you that this is just the beginning. I think it's a prerequisite for this to happen.
Yes, exactly. I think that's the point, is that just as HTML and HTTP were the prerequisite for search to happen, this is, and a lot of other things that were built on top of those web standards, getting this piece right at the standards level means that there will be the possibility for lots of new things that we haven't thought of yet, precisely because they don't have to build something of that size and scale to do it.
Yeah,
that's going to be really interesting.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. I think that what I'm trying to highlight is just that Track as an infrastructure piece and Track as a product are actually very distinct, and yes. I really look forward to Track as a product, understanding how that's going to actually come about. And when you ask the question, what is Superfeeder going to become? Is it going to be the plumbing, or is it going to become more user visible? I think that, I'm not involved in this, but I would imagine that it really comes back to the question of, once Track as plumbing starts to work, then you can start thinking of Track as a user service, and so that's an area that maybe they could look into.
All right, so Julien, that's sort of your cue to say thanks for not talking about me at all for the entire hour.
No, it was perfect actually, and what Jyri, Mark, and Brett just said is something that I perfectly agree with. I mean, definitely what Brett said in the end, whether there's a difference between the infrastructure and the actual end user product service is something that we really insist on, and that we're providing the infrastructure and we're looking forward to people actually building the service on top of our service, our truck service.
Well, I had hoped to be able to. I appreciate everybody who came and joined this show, because I think that right here we have a subset of the people that can actually make a difference in terms of popularizing the notion that we're sick of waiting for Twitter, and that there's no reason to wait for Twitter, and that if, as Jyri suggests, and I think also Brett, and I think everybody suggested this, as Facebook begins to follow the logical conclusions of its opening up around its metadata, that they are going to be supportive of this effort, and that at that point what we need to do is to be able to make very clear what Brett calls just the opening shot of this. We need to make clear what that fundamental set of functionalities is that will trigger this build out, which will include product from all of these different sources. The sooner that we get to that, and the sooner that we stop waiting for Twitter to do the right thing, or even the wrong thing from their perspective, they're just not going to do it. I think we'll be I think that Facebook is the key to unbundling this. If we can have an authoritative stream of information that flows through at least two major sources, Buzz being one of them, and StatusNet, Chatter eventually, whatever. As soon as we've got two, then there will be rules of the road with which we can begin to build out the infrastructure for a real-time environment. So I want to thank everybody who showed up today, and I want to thank our sponsors, Rackspace, and particularly Rob Legess, without which this show would not be on the air, or still on the air, and NewTek and their fabulous TriCaster, without which the show wouldn't be on video. And we'll see you again next time. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.